يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وآمنوا برسوله يؤتكم كفلين من رحمته.
يبصرونهم is a new sentence to explain the previous ayah. He said, لا يسأل حميم حميما. And so it's as if someone is wondering, and Allah is answering his question that he's wondering about. Why is it that no zealous friend shall ask a zealous friend how he is? Is it because he can't see him? So the answer here is no, he can see him. There are a number of hyperboles here. First, yubasirunahum means they will be made to see each other completely plain, as if they are, as they actually are, clearly, so that they recognize each other. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have angels to show them to each other, their closest, warmest friends, despite all of which they will just leave them be. They won't even act like they know them there. They will just leave them be and do nothing, and not even ask them a thing. The point here is that that moment and that judgment will be the crucial nexus between everything that you did in this life and all that you shall find and have forever and ever after it. And so this is the most significant moment almost of our existence. It's the crucial nexus, the juncture, the crossroads. I know. And so between you and between all you did in this life and all that you shall find and have forever and ever. And so what is Allah telling you by this? So don't hazard that moment with any emotional ties you have made here and now that will not please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there and then. It's because you're like somebody and you want to do this for them or want to do that for them, make sure that it's something that doesn't offend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you'll have great troubles. This is what should concern us all and what we should learn from this. Second, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not use the preposition bi for yubasirunahum, normally expected with the verb yubasir. For he did not say yubasirunahum, yubasiruna bihim, but omitted it to indicate an even more direct and unmistakable perception. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's transitive force, or it addresses its object with a preposition, and the preposition is absent for the power and succinctness of the. Yuwaddu al-mujrimu. Abu Sa'ud says that this is a new sentence to explain that each criminal will be occupied with saving himself alone, even wishing if only he could save his own hide by sacrificing the closest of all people to him in his stead as ransom. Just anything to anything to get off the hook, so as to speak, that he's got himself onto, even if he had to sacrifice his own sons. Yuwaddu means a fervent. Yuwaddu is a strong verb of love. It means fervent wish. And rendered in the translation, so wish if only he could. And this is the way we say a fervent wish. I wish if only I could do such and that. It means a real deep-seated and fervent wish. He shall wish if only he could, ransom himself. And by al-mujrim, and we have to remember this point because we're Muslims. The mujrim, the first meaning here is the kafir, who is a mujrim, but also all those who committed great sins, as we've mentioned before. Every single scene in Jahannam and every single scene of shiddah in the akhirah applies to the ursat al-muslimin and to the mujrimeen al-kafirin, except illa khulud, except being there forever. So these are some pretty stiff things, and these are things that we should make us think 2 times and 3 times and 5 times about every act that we do. I know. So here, law yaftadi, if only he could ransom himself. The word law, as we mentioned at the end of the last session, somebody asked a question about the Prophet ﷺ. It wasn't disrespectful for the law. What was it? لو تقول علينا بعض الأقاويل. This law is, if only he could, is used to indicate, as we mentioned then, the counterfactual conditional. Fatima bint Muhammad sadaqat, the Prophet ﷺ. This is a counterfactual conditional. The first part of the condition, it never happen. I know. That is, but he cannot ransom himself, is what it means here. Yaftadi means to pay something to save oneself. A ransom, and in English, to ransom himself. Yaftadi. Prisoners of war used to, when there was for the Reconquista, as they called it, in the Spanish, in Spain, when the Muslims were ruling Spain, and they had long years of wars between the Muslims and between the Franks, back and forth, and also in other frontiers where the Muslims were fighting, like in southern Turkey. There was jihad for many years, but that was the frontier for the Abbasid Caliphate, between the Byzantines and between the Muslims. And so when a prisoner was captured, they would contact his next of kin and would say, all right, 35,000 dirhams, and you'll get your person back, or whatever it was. And this is something that people have done for many, many millennia, to pay something to save oneself. And so the payment itself is called in Arabic a fida. The Yemenis, if they knock something, or if you knock something over and it breaks, they say fidak. They're being polite, means may it be your ransom. And also the word fidya in fiqh is paying an expiation. If your ibadah it takes an expiation. If you did something wrong, for example, or for a vitiated ibadah, like in Hajj or something. And so the fidya is the expiation that you have to. You feed the poor, or do this or this. This is the fidya. من عذاب يوم إذن من عذاب يوم إذن, on the chastisement on that, from the chastisement on that day. Now, students of Arabic will notice that we didn't say that min adabi yawmi idhin is like a idafa. It's like an ascriptive construct. The idafa is the x of the y. Mudafu mudafi, they often refer to it as, or idafa, the x of the y. But we'll notice that the translation does not say the chastisement of that day, but says on that day, because the tanween of the Yom Idin is called the tanween awad, or genitive indefinite ending that stands in for something else. Here, namely the sentence يوم إذن تحدث هذه الأمور أو يوم إذن تحدث هذه الأمور الهائلة, on the day that these horrific matters take place. It's not just the adab yom idin, which is why I've translated as on rather than of that day. And so I know. So it is more hyperbolic, in other words, stronger and more emphatic than saying the chastisement of that day, min adabi dhalika al-yawm, because yom idin is not just about the adab. It stands in for verse 8. A day the sky shall be as molten ore, and it stands in for verse 9, and mountains shall be as wool, and it stands in for verse 10. No zealous friend shall even ask zealous friend. All of these, it's the Yom Idin means it's standing in for those. The Tanween stands for all of these things, and many other sentences. All of the things that describe Yom Al-Qiyamah, and so it's super emphatic and super evocative, at evoking to Arab ears of all of these things. It's strong. It's much more emphatic than saying. It's not mere mudaf and mudaf ilayh. So bibanihi at the end of the verse, yaftadi yawma idhin bibanihi. Here the Quranic order begins with, and has a whole list of other things that he's willing to sacrifice besides his own self. The criminal. Here the Quranic order begins with the most beloved and precious things that the committer of crimes would sacrifice in ransom to save himself from the punishment of that day. The English expression, grasping at straws, that you've perhaps heard before, comes to mind here, taken from the image of a drowning man fighting his way to the surface of the water, and then seeing nothing there to climb onto or to hold onto to stay afloat except some straw floating on the water. And so and these will do nothing for his plight whatsoever. And so you say that so-and-so, if he's just kind of thinking up excuses to save his face or something, you say he's grasping at straws in Arabic, and it means that he's doing something that doesn't have a great deal of benefit, will do nothing for his plight. And we should remember that all of these things that Allah is describing here also apply to the sinful Muslim who is punished. The people who invaded other people's countries and killed people and evicted people from their homes and did all of these crimes will not be left to just enter paradise because they're Muslims, but they'll have to face the music with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that includes us too. Each of us has their own deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you did things that you didn't take care of in this life, by returning whatever you stole from the person or something like this, if you have big harams that you did, or even little harams, everybody will be dealt with justice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is what should come to mind, not to say, well, have a detour sign on your ears, that applies to somebody else. No, but rather, no ihala, but rather you think about how you can avert this from yourself, because this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is keeping it in our book. Also apply to the sinful Muslim who is punished by Allah. And as we mentioned before, every single punishment and torment in hell applies to him except remaining forever in hell. But all the other things may well apply to him. So the message and your homework when you hear this verse is to get the haram and makruh out of your life. You don't need haram makeup to go out and face the public, ladies. And the grandfather of the house and the inheritance you cheated your daughters out of to give to your son, you don't need this. It's just something that many ethnic Muslim lands suffer from. The daughters get 0, and the son gets, who is already able to earn money for himself, gets everything. And this is defying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives each heir their due. And so these are especially are kind of sins that you don't want to have anything to do with, and the ones that are against other people. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if something is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tawbah. But if something is between you and another person, especially financial rights, it's really serious. And you have to get it taken care of before you die, or you're going to take a clobbering from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know. And so the inheritance you cheated your daughters out of to give to your son, or the last delicious piece of ghiba you blogged out against so-and-so, and it got 1,005 hits the first day, people coming in to read about it, your piece of ghiba that you put on your blog, is 1,005 fires in hell to incinerate you, and having to give up your Hajj or your Umrah to the person that you did that to. And also, and all our good works will go to the person that we wronged. And when we don't have any more good works to give, then their bad works will be thrown on top of us, and we'll have to pay for them. And so this is why it's super important not to do anything against other people that Allah hates. Super important. And so you have to give your Hajj and Umrah to them on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and it not be enough to turn aside the fires. And so get up tonight and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness, and see who you have to make reparations to, and hold on to and grab at the realities of taqwa and tawbah and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, instead of grabbing at straws, or grabbing at dunya, or grabbing at nafs, or grabbing at hawa, or obeying the shaitan because you're angry. So if these verses don't stimulate introspection means you look into yourself and think about what's there. If these verses don't stimulate introspection about what you can do, or what one can do, one has missed their point. And bibanihi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating imagery here, taswir, here, of the intensity of the terror when people finally understand just how short they sold themselves in the dunya, and for what. So he began with the dearest first, banihi, meaning male children, sons, for their being special to most people, most parents, and the least dispensable. But for the absolute terror of punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is emphasizing. The people will be pretty freaked out, and if they have a single active brain cell and they understand what's coming, and they will. And this is emphasized in the English, by the English words, with his very sons, meaning his actual sons. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began with al-az, the most precious and dear, because the rhetorical point is to stress the shiddat al-hawl, the intensity of the terror and the intensity of the horror being then and there, so that we all get moving here and now, as opposed to Surat al-Abasa. He frowned where the emphasis is not on the fida, or ransom, to emphasize the terror of that day, but rather it's firar, fleeing from each other, in the verse of 34 to 36, Surat Abasa, where the reverse order is used. The reverse order to what comes here, it's exact opposite order. Why? What we're explaining. يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه. Bani is first here, but last in Surah Abasa. Why? A day when even a real man will flee from his own brother and mother and father and his long-loved wife and very sons, in which the order is from the least dearest to the greatest in fondness. I know. So here the order depicts the magnitude of the terror through the level of desperation of the criminals to pay anything rather than face their punishment, and is a portrait of utter, overwhelming sorrow, al-lahbatu al-taghiyah, and terrifying shock, al-fazar al-mudhil, and a stubbornly followed, wayward, pig-headed impulse to ruin oneself for good, al-raghba al-jamiha fil-iflas. Nas'al Allah al-afiyah.